I was a bit uneasy at first because, it's almost as if it's like the Singapore minister throwing Malaysia under the bus. Hey guys, welcome to the Are We OK podcast, the podcast that talks about politics and public policies in ways that are relevant to you, our loyal listeners. Thank you to the more than 33,000 of you who have clicked the subscribe button. For those of you who haven't clicked the subscribe button yet, you know what to do. I am Dr. Bota or OKM, and he is...
I'm Mr. Money, Peter.
So Peter, how have you been? We haven't caught up in a while, in a couple of weeks, I think.
Oh yeah, things has been really busy. Recently it's been going out, meeting a lot of people, preparing for some of the new development in the company itself.
Okay. So will we hear about this on the Mr. Money TV channel, or are you going to...
Oh yes, you guys are definitely going to hear about it in the Mr. Money TV channel. In fact, just to give you a sneak peek, we are developing some financial tools to help people make better decisions so that they can achieve economic security.
Does it have any gamification kind of components to it?
I think it will be slowly added on into it, but basically it will be an online solution to help people. But before that, I wanted to ask you, or more to say, I want to congratulate you.
Oh, yes.
For the launching of your PPE class.
Yes, launch of the Philosophy, Politics and Economics program. We had a media launch yesterday. And I'm glad that a number of the members of the industry advisory panel, including people like Kari Jamaluddin, Sharil Hamdan, Dr. Tricia Yeo, Associate Professor Melati Nungsari, Lee Kai, formerly from McKinsey, and Fahana, who's an economic researcher, they came to support. And it was a very good event. Very glad that we finally has kicked this off. And we're looking at the April intake of hopefully about 10 students, and then September intake will be a bigger intake, maybe 20 students. Want to keep the cohort small, maybe about 30 people, to make this a group of a very interesting initial cohort of PPE students.
Right. Very, very exclusive and very special group.
We like to think of it that way. So hopefully you'll be able to hear more about this program later on and some of the interesting activities that the students are doing through something I have curated called a student experience pathway, where they may be able to participate in some of the events, some of the talks, some of the programs that I'm part of, and maybe even bringing some of them here to the Are We OK show to let them see what happens behind the scenes.
Oh, fantastic. Maybe you want to give the people also a very quick brief intro on what is it about, because every time I tell people your PPE class, right, one of the most common question they ask is, hey, actually what can you do after studying PPE? Because it's not like accountant, you become auditor, right?
Yep. So I will paraphrase what Khairi Jamaluddin said at our launch yesterday when we had a panel session. He said that PPE students are like the Swiss Army knife in the workforce, meaning you can use them for different functions. They are the ultimate generalists who can be put in different areas of a company or an organization and use their analytical skills and critical thinking to be able to understand what are the problem areas, what are possible solutions, and really be able to go and execute and design good solutions to the problems that they encounter. So think of it when you encounter any problems with your car, with your house, with when you go on holiday in the hotel room, take out your Swiss Army knife, it can do anything that you need the Swiss Army knife to do.
Fantastic description. Wonderful pitch. Now it makes me feel like I should join or either send my kids or even myself to the class.
I'll come up maybe with an executive PPE program, then maybe you can attend some of the classes. Speaking of political figures, we're going to talk about NVIDIA chips. Right, so I'm not sure whether you've been following this news, Peter. Last week, the Minister of Law from Singapore, Shanmugam, had a press conference, and in that press conference, he revealed that some of the NVIDIA chips that were put into servers, Dell, Supermicro and others, that were then shipped to Malaysia, I think probably Penang or somewhere in the Klang Valley, were shipped to other countries. I think he probably means, countries like China, for example. And these are the chips that were under investigation under this chips diffusion restriction on the part of the Biden administration, actually, that was made the news last year. Right. So when I hear of this news, right, I'll share my reaction and then you can respond to it, Peter. I was a bit uneasy at first because, it's almost as if it's like the Singapore minister throwing Malaysia under the bus, right? It's like calling your neighbor, hey, actually we are not guilty. It's the neighbor that's guilty, right? It's like, oh, suddenly, you throw a rock, then suddenly, oh, okay, it's not me, it's him. Okay, I'm not saying that Singapore is throwing rocks or whatever. I'm just saying that, from an optics perspective, it seems that way. But then, when I think about it a little bit more, I can understand where he's coming from, in the sense that, Singapore has the right to do their own investigation, right? And then if, let's say, the investigation finds X, Y, and Z, then they also have a right to show those findings, to their own stakeholders. Especially given the fact that elections in Singapore are coming, right? And I think for this particular minister, Shanmugam, he wants to show that, look, I can, be brave and stand up and talk about these issues in an open way. And it also shows his own sort of like character, as being able to be brave enough, so to speak, to even call out your neighbor, right, on this particular issue. And maybe it's good optics for himself and also the PAP going into the next general election. So definitely there is some sort of like a general election kind of angle, because Singapore will have to call its general elections before the end of the year. Right? So there is that kind of element involved. But of course, when I put on my MITI, former Deputy Minister of MITI hat, I would think something like, this affects the both of us. Why don't you just let us know quietly, and then we do a joint investigation, and then we align properly, Don't go and suddenly announce, then throw us under the bus. We don't have notice, and then we have to say, we have to do our own investigation, then only reply.
Someone with Trump caught wind, then he decided to say something.
So
made troublesome for everyone.
Yeah.
Right?
So what do you think? Is Singapore being not so friendly neighbor in this particular case?
I think this kind of definitely comes as a shock when I read it. Actually, in fact, when I read it twice. Because I thought my IC wrongly. Because it's very un-Singapore-like to
make something like this public.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, they're usually very well known for great diplomacy. I was just trying to ask myself, what is the purpose? I was thinking probably it could be, maybe they are just afraid that right now Trump being so erratic, let's defend ourselves first before talking about anything. Or maybe they have gotten certain intelligence that this is one area that is not on his next list to discuss. Because he just settled the whole steel thing, right? Finished threatening that. Now it's time to move on to the next subject matter. So maybe, I don't know.
Well, I think Trump still has some issues to settle vis-a-vis Canada and Mexico. It's getting ramped up, ramp down. And I think that is still an ongoing saga. Additional tariffs from China. We'll talk about it in a separate episode with another guest. But yeah, I think there is an element of that in terms of Singapore trying to hedge and take a more proactive position. Singapore has been at odds. Singapore has been really emphasizing the fact that they have a trade deficit with the US. Unlike Vietnam, unlike Malaysia, unlike Thailand, we run a trade surplus with the US. So this is part and parcel, I think, of the larger positioning. So but remember, all politics is local. Even that kind of positioning to the US is trying to show your domestic audience that I'm taking a proactive position to take care of Singapore's own interests.
That's true.
Yeah, but I mean, it is what it is. I think, MITI and the relevant agencies will do the necessary investigations, and then we'll see what happens to this. But at the same time, I'm not sure whether you've been keeping track of this, but Trump's own position vis-a-vis these kinds of high-end chips, how they may be used by China, even his whole demeanor or approach or attitude towards this DeepSeek, what it was doing, how it actually came out and had a much cheaper LLM that cost apparently $6 million to train, as opposed to the billions of dollars that you needed for training ChatGPT. Trump was actually quite measured in his approach,
yes,
right? You noticed that as well, right?
Yes.
And even for this chips issue,
The whole tech side, he's quite
a bit more chill, right?
a bit more chill, which is quite surprising.
Yeah, why do you think that's the case?
My read at this point, I think that he knows his grassroots people who support him are generally in the steel industry. And the greatest pride of America during that time was the whole car Detroit kind of thing, right? And so he's trying to restore the old glory. Now, the next step is about the tech side, right? I think for him, to a certain extent, he is a person, if you look at a lot of the decisions that he's made, he liked to wait for people to be dependent on him and he start pulling his cards. But when no cards on you, he will wait a bit. Yeah. And I think that the tech giant side, he is accumulating his cards. So as the intensity of competition mounts up, it plays to his benefit because then you got something that you need to back me to do. But if it doesn't mount up, you are just a nice supporter to me. And
so I think what you're trying to say is that some of these tech players, he feels that they haven't demonstrated enough loyalty to him. They haven't demonstrated enough subservience to him, even though some of these tech players, they did, give contributions for his inaugural events and stuff like that, right? But, if you notice things like when the additional tariffs were announced, on China, one of the things that the Chinese government did was to open an investigation or antitrust investigation into Google. Right, even though to me it's a bit strange because Google doesn't really have operations in China as far as I know, right? So but when that happened, you didn't really see Trump coming out to say that, hey, I'm going to defend Google, I'm going to make sure that it is not bullied by the Chinese government and things like that. Yeah. So your take on his overall position on the tech sector. Maybe take out crypto for now. That's a separate discussion. Yeah, that was a separate story. But as far as AI is concerned, even semiconductors, he's not really taken such a strong position on this.
My read of him generally, I notice, is that he like to be the taiko. He like to be the savior.
Yeah.
So in this case, there's not much of savior to play. So why do I want to stick my neck out?
Wait until the situation becomes more competitive.
And that's why it's surprising, right? Like, for example, I was surprised that even Elon Musk being his biggest supporter, he approved quite some policy that is not very good for Elon Musk's business.
Okay,
right?
You're talking about the EV subsidies.
Yes, EV subsidies, and stuff like that. Okay, maybe that could be a part of a joint agreement on things. Then we talk about TikTok ban thing, right? He delayed that, and it's almost like what you say, lo. You don't really need me, what? That's why you're not really paying that kind of tribute anyway. You are not kissing the ring. It is more like, I'm willing to associate with you at this point. And you notice that the people around him generally, except the billionaires, which are all the tech guys, are all kissing the ring.
Yes.
This is the only group that it is an equal or associate, but he's the higher level associate. It's not yet kissed the ring. So I think
Facebook has maybe kissed a little bit more already.
A little bit more.
Google maybe a bit less. Microsoft maybe a bit less.
But the kiss the ring level for other people is quite like Zelensky, right? Just take a look at it. After all that spectacle, okay, no lah, he meant good. I'll sign the agreement.
Yes, correct.
I expect to see him next week.
So basically, just humiliate him first. And then put him in a corner, and then after that, make him eat humble pie, and then only.
And that seems to be strategy on a lot of things.
Okay, so just one small clarification: President Trump did pull back a lot of the subsidies and the assistance for EVs, but those are for EVs that are made in the US, right? Made by your Volvos, your BMWs. In most of the production takes place in states in the South, in Tennessee, in South Carolina. So those EVs are actually not Tesla. Most of Tesla's production comes out from their Chinese factory, right? So in a sense, this may help Tesla even the playing field a bit.
Actually, there was another thing, right? My theory was like, how come this time round, right? He's not as aggressive towards China, right? My another take is because Elon Musk has a lot at stake in China.
Possibly, and I think the Chinese government has been quite careful not to go after Elon Musk because I think that's one area where they haven't really touched that much of. Of course,
they touch Google.
They touch Google, yes.
There.
Of course, some will speculate that independent of what the Chinese government does, the natural inclination is for the demand of EVs to shift towards Chinese models rather than to buy Tesla. I haven't really checked what the numbers are, but it's possible that is the approach that the Chinese government is taking. Let the market decide, and the market will probably decide against Tesla, right? Which means that Tesla will be out looking for other markets to expand in, including different countries in Southeast Asia. Yeah. So, but that's a bit of a separate discussion. So the chips thing is important, and since we're talking about NVIDIA chips, let me go to the next topic, which is this signing ceremony that took place, I think a couple of days ago, between the Malaysian government and a chip design company that's based in the UK, but backed by Japanese capital and owners, including somebody by the name of Masayoshi Son, who is the founder of SoftBank. So that agreement, let me just explain to our readers what it means, is for Malaysia, the Malaysian government, to pay ARM a sum of $250 million over a number of years. And in exchange for this money that we are paying, ARM would then allow a number of software licenses for their IC design ecosystem on two fronts. Largely it would be on the CPU front, which is your sort of like more traditional computing side, and then your GPU front, which is the graphic processing unit front, that is more associated with AI kinds of processing, which is where NVIDIA also comes in at the chip level. But this one is more to do with the software to design those chips. Right. So the software licensing is obviously very expensive. And the idea behind signing this agreement is so that the government can say, okay, your small guys who want to start up in this IC ecosystem, you don't have the kind of financial capital and muscle to buy these software licenses. We're going to buy it for you. But after we buy it from ARM, then you guys apply, and then we will have a process whereby we can allow you to have access to those licenses. The idea is that with those licenses, then you can start to increase your capabilities in parts of the IC design ecosystem. Right, so it will benefit maybe some of the local IC design companies that are listed, companies like this Oppstar, for example. I think
Key
Asic will be another one, and then maybe some of the unlisted ones like Skychip, for example. Right, so and it may even promote or encourage others to come into the ecosystem. Right, so. Yeah, any questions that you want to ask or thoughts that you want to share?
I mean, I haven't dwelled too deep into the whole thing, but in my general first read through, I think it's actually a good thing. Yeah, a lot of people are asking whether should the government do this? Shouldn't growth be a private concern, not a government concern? I mean, I sometimes I think that way, but I think sometimes the truth is you need some government help lah. And in this case here, I agree, because if you really want to bring in high value tech into Malaysia, this is where the highest of high is. Designs the chip for Apple. Actually, most of the consumables we have today, super high end stuff lah, right? And so it means that when you have that, there are a number of things that happen. It means the local chip designer get to learn the real structure. They get to understand what are the problems they can solve, and probably, hopefully, they can build their own version of it, right? And when you look at like bigger company, even at TSMC, it wasn't started really by Maurice Chang. It was started by Maurice Chang under the command or instruction of Taiwan government. Yeah, and Taiwan government got funded it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that this is a great thing in concept again. My question is execution again.
Okay.
Like in terms of, let's say when you apply for it that time, will it be given to really the people who are, those are parts.
Okay, so let me delve into the execution part a little bit deeper. First, by asking a couple of questions. I think the first question that I'll ask about this deal would be that what are the filtering mechanisms and the terms and conditions that the Malaysian government will put on the table to allow interested parties to apply for and have access to this software license. Right. So obviously, I think for the local guys that are already in the ecosystem, if they want to have access, people like Oppstar and others, they would be, I think, first in line to be able to apply and get it. And that's a no-brainer, right? But there may be other, startups that are not so well known, that we don't know about, that, maybe they don't have a very good track record as of yet, but they are new. So would they be able to apply? Would they be able to get into this ecosystem? And, that the fact that the government is involved means that the threshold is lower. Because normally for ARM, if let's say you are a startup, you don't have much money to pay, they won't, even if let's say you get funding from VC, they may not even let you into the ecosystem, because who are you? They don't know you, right? But if let's say the Malaysian government says, okay, I endorse these guys, they're under some plan in terms of being developed into something more significant, and this can come from the Malaysian government at the federal level, and also at the state level, right? Because Selangor has aspirations to build this IC Design Center. They have this thing called the Advanced Semiconductor Academy of Malaysia, ASEM, which I'm one of the advisors on. So there are opportunities to take advantage. So we want to know who can actually access. And related to this question is, if let's say, there's a foreign player that's interested to access this, these licenses, and they want to come in, right? They would likely have to form some sort of JV venture with a Malaysian entity, so that is more than 50% owned by Malaysian. Hence, they will be allowed to access. So that could also be another opportunity, but we need to know whether they will be eligible or not. So the terms and conditions haven't been set out lah. That's one question. Second question would be, okay, so you buy the licenses, right? There is this group of people, whether existing or new, who can maybe take advantage of that to develop parts of the IC design ecosystem. What I've been told by some experts, some people in the capital markets who have funded semiconductor initiatives before, is that this portion is not enough. Meaning you get the people in there to go and do the IC design research and whatnot. That is not sufficient. You actually need to have a ready market or an incoming market whereby these guys, after they develop their own solutions in the IC design ecosystem, parts of it, you cannot design the whole thing, right? They then must be able to sell it to a customer, right? So that customer part is not quite there yet, right? And I think this is one area where, hopefully with better coordination between government and industry, we are able to identify specific areas where the IC design efforts can be focused on. Because you can't, focus on just general IC design, or even say, I want to build part of the AI chip ecosystem, because sometimes you have to be much more specific in terms of the kind of AI activities that you want the chip to do, right? So, that would be the second question. And then the third question or bucket of questions that I want to ask is, you've committed these funds to a foreign entity like ARM. What about the local boys? What about your Vitrox, your Inari Emerton, your local guys who have been in the OSAT business for a long time, and now maybe they want to get into the sort of IC design ecosystem, and some of them have aspirations to do that. Why not funnel the money directly to them? Right? Why not give them development grants or R&D grants, rather than to pay pay all these funds to ARM, right? Are you going to come up with another fund? Are you going to get the Glicks to get involved to fund some of the local boys? So I think these questions need to be asked. Doesn't mean that I don't support this. I think in principle, like what you say, is a idea worth considering.
Yeah, I did thought about that, and one of the things that came to my mind was that I think that sometimes for a big company, for example, like even Inari or this, right, they're very big, and when you're big, do you move fast? That's another question to ask. So I think if they're able to prove an ability of moving fast, then it will be highly beneficial. Yeah, because very often the issue is they don't move fast because they're comfortable with the OSAT. They just let it be aspiration aside, but my current economic income is not being affected. Yeah. So unless they have the foresight, then great. Then I think fantastic. That's also another great concept to work on. I think the next thing that they should really, once these go up, is the next thing they say on the market, right? I think they need to start encouraging the more solid kind of tech play in Malaysia already. By inviting other people to come, like you say, that would be the fastest in terms of self-developing. Let's say Vietnam got some sort of AI kind of thing, or even whoever, and because I have this access, I'm going to make it a sandbox. Sandbox that allow it, but the IP and whatnot, you want to build a company here, so it becomes the next unicorn, it becomes the next thing in Malaysia.
Okay.
Kind of like a similar play like what Singapore does to a certain extent, but more
to
about
attract people like Grab and all that. Yeah,
but more about access to capital. That was their selling point. And in this case, since you have maybe make use of that.
Yeah, access to technology in this case.
Yeah, right. And then there's AI. There's whatnot. There are some of this deep tech, solid tech kind of play in Malaysia, but I think for a very long time, such kind of company is not. I don't think many investors in Malaysia have the appetite for that because
probably too abstract sometimes. You don't really know what the end use is for. And,
that's right.
And,
and then it takes very long before you can see the money.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So, but I think that if you already invested in this, then you gotta, like you said, what's next? I just have that. All right, useless.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, and this is where I hope that agencies or ministries like the Ministry of Economy can work closely together with MITI, with MIDA, so that better coordination, better rollout, better utilization of this ARM software can be done, so that the taxpayer also feels assured that the money has been well spent.
So does it mean that if anyone out there is doing some sort of a deep tech kind of work that they think that such chips may benefit them, they can reach out to you?
Maybe not me. As and when the terms and conditions have been developed and then announced, I think it will be through MIDA, because MIDA was the one who signed the agreement with ARM, with ARM. Then I think the process of applying and all that can be found. I will be able to find online, and we better do it soon because I think the clock is ticking already.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah, I think the payments I have either started or will start very soon lah. to ARM. We're gonna watch this space and we're gonna see what results it can produce within the next couple of years, and we remain cautiously optimistic. Be right back after this. Hey guys, welcome back to the Are We OK podcast, and we're gonna talk about the issue of hospitals and medical costs, or the cost of medical services here in Malaysia. Of course, we've discussed and have talked about the rising cost of medical insurance.
Yep.
But I think one of the reasons why the cost of medical insurance is rising is because the cost of private hospital care is also rising.
That's right.
Right. So in response to this, a friend of mine, Bayan Baru MP, Sim Tze Tzin, who used to be the Deputy Minister for Agriculture, and has been championing the issue of affordable healthcare, for the last couple of months. He came out with a proposal to say that, we should consider privatizing some of the hospitals that are sort of like owned by GLC entities, right? And the two he gave were the hospitals under the IHH group, which is owned by Khazanah, but is a listed entity with operations in different countries, including in Malaysia. And then the other group that he referred to was KPJ, which I think their majority shareholder is J Corp or
That's
Johor
right.
Corp. So that's a state entity lah. So that actually received quite good response. I saw a poll that was done on this particular issue, and I think more than 60% of respondents said that his idea was a good idea, right? And I think it is a reflection of people's concern about rising medical costs in the country, and especially for those who feel that they cannot afford the insurance anymore, or that they are afraid that if I go to the public hospital, the waiting lines and the queues are too long. I'm forced to go to the private hospitals, and even my own medical insurance under the company may not be able to cover everything.
That's right.
Then I have to come out of my own pocket, and if let's say the costs are too high, it's something that really will hit me quite badly, right? So just like to hear your response. Number one, with respect to the issue of rising medical care costs in private hospitals, and then number two, is the right approach or the solution, one of the solutions to addressing this problem, to privatize KPJ and also to privatize IHH?
I think personally for me, maybe I'm not as well read again, or I don't quite see where the point is coming at, is what makes you think that privatizing means you don't bother about profit?
Okay.
Yeah. Isn't all business profit oriented?
Correct.
Yeah. So privatizing, delisting, for me, there's no pressure from public shareholders, but there's still a pressure for profit for whoever the shareholder is.
Yeah. So I think you're asking the right question here. Maybe what YB Sim is trying to say is that if you privatize those units, you don't have to be so driven by profits, because your shareholder, your majority shareholder, becomes either the state or the federal government, and they should be able to manage or give the mandate to these entities to say that, hey, actually, it's okay for you to not to increase your medical costs so much. You shouldn't charge so like $20 for a pair of medical gloves and things like that. So that is the implicit assumption, right? But there are some consequences to this kind of approach, right? What do you think these consequences are?
Now, once you privatize it and it's fully owned by the state government or federal government, then it's equivalent to a government hospital.
Okay.
Or a state hospital.
Okay.
Now, these come up with a whole different set of problems, right? Why is it not free? There's a reason why Malaysia have private hospital. It is because the infrastructure and the funding is not enough basically to supply a great healthcare for everyone. Government hospital is oversupply of it. Then if you privatize it, means you fully own, means you fork out money yourself, back to square one problem, right? Now, in my opinion, again, it doesn't quite hit there. It will create a whole set of problem in terms of funding again, which burden the national budget itself. So I think it's more about how to create a policy or system to manage healthcare costs.
Okay.
That should be a more key concern.
Okay, so I agree with your approach. Just want to sort of add on a little bit with regards to the mandate or the motivations of a private healthcare unit. I think that they still can be profit motivated, largely speaking, even if let's say they are privatized, because they won't be considered a government hospital. They will be considered a hospital that's owned by a GLC like Khazanah.
Okay.
Right? So,
like Jacob, Khazanah.
Yes, correct.
Fair.
So Khazanah still can look at these as private entities. Right? But if let's say the government wants to give that mandate to Khazanah to say that you need to not make so much money, there are knock-on effects. Right? I'm not saying that is right or wrong, but the knock-on effects will be things like, if you are not making so much money, your doctors are not going to be paid as much. Which means many of these doctors, if they are not paid as much, what will they do? They will go to other private hospitals that are not owned by Khazanah or J Corp that pays more. Or worse still, they will go to Singapore. Right? So that kind of flight of quality is something that we need to think about.
Right.
So that's one. Second thing is, if let's say you want Khazanah to decrease that profit motivation, right? What may happen is that if let's say the dividends enjoyed by Khazanah is affected, the money they pay to government will also be affected in terms of the
That's right.
dividends, right? The whole makeup of Khazanah, if you let's say you want to take a look at Khazanah versus let's say Temasek in Singapore or whatnot, is that they have to look after shareholder returns internally.
That's right.
Right, which means they have to be accountable to the Malaysian government as well in terms of the kind of revenues that are generating. Because if let's say you give that mandate and suddenly their returns fall by X
Yeah,
percent,
then you're going to blame them as well.
then you're going to whack them and say, hey, how come you didn't do this well?
Yeah, and optics also, honestly, if they still charge and make profitable, I bet people will complain and they say, hey, it's fully owned by a government entity. What?
Sure.
Yeah, so, no.
Okay, so then we come back to the part of the argument that you brought up just now, which is the issue of controlling healthcare costs. And I think this is the crux of the matter. More important than maybe the medical insurance issue. Because what is happening in the private hospitals now, right, is that the ability for you to charge a certain amount for your operations is governed and controlled by the Private Healthcare Facilities Act. Right? So for an operation of a certain nature, this cost is charged.
Yep.
And then what happens is that because hospitals want to make profit, they put all the additional charges into your gloves, your tissue paper, your meals. All that kind of pricing becomes very not transparent and not really according to market conditions. Right? But you have to have those charges if let's say you want to be able to pay your nurses, pay your doctors, enjoy a decent enough profit.
Yeah.
Right? So until and unless that kind of issue is addressed, right? Are you going to do that by maybe what they are saying, this is a diagnostics related group where you set maybe more flexibility in certain prices, but it is within that range for this kind of treatment in this category, and then another category they have a different kind of pricing structure that will give more flexibility to the hospitals so that they don't put all the extra costs into your tissue and your gloves and things like that. Whether or not that will exert downward pressure on healthcare, private healthcare, I'm not quite sure because it's a very, very complex and also very, not easy to understand ecosystem. Right? People have been trying to contain healthcare costs, in other countries, in the US, for example, for a long time. And then for countries that do manage to contain healthcare costs or at least have a better ecosystem, right? Most of them would at least have some component of a national health insurance scheme.
Like our neighbor.
Right, Singapore does it a little bit differently because they do have these private savings in the form of MediShield and Medicare, where you actually contribute into that system, similar like a EPF system. Right, we can talk about it later. I think that should be part and parcel of the discussion ecosystem. But if let's say we are not even willing to start talking about a national healthcare system, where more savings can be had, and if let's say the private sector want to come in, then it is funded partly through the national health system as well. For certain procedures, you can have the choice of going to public, or if you go to private, we subsidize a certain amount. Above that, you pay yourself. Right? These kinds of conversations need to be had, but I don't really see anyone in the health ecosystem stepping up to the plate and be willing to say we need to have this national health insurance discussion. Because in the past, when it was brought up, they call it One Care and things like that under Najib. When my colleagues were in the opposition, I was in the opposition. There were a lot of opposition noises to this kind of scheme. Right now that we are in government, should we consider bringing this back, or at least bringing the discussion back onto the table?
I agree. That should be something that should be part and parcel of the solution for more sustainability, Because if you look at any other country, like you say, when they can contain the healthcare costs, generally there's this component in it.
Yes.
Yeah, and healthcare is a tricky business where it is a basic need, a welfare, but at the same time is made profitable, right? There's a lot of arguments. I think one thing I want to clarify also is that doctor side, right? Yeah, in terms of doctors' charges. So apparently, the other day a doctor friend texted me. Then he was showing me the MMS, Malaysian Medical society. Yeah. So they have a standard charges for doctors
Yep.
for all the procedures.
Yep.
So because we tend to lump the whole hospital bill as doctors. So he said, actually, no. We as doctors, I'm only charging based on that procedure. Whatever other charges is hospital charges.
Yes.
So they were also busy defending themselves lah. And in fact, they also clarified with me that when there is let's say certain procedure or even consultation where price difference. The other day, there was this particular Instagram that came out where people complain and say a particular hospital started with B. Okay, first consultation, they asked them, you got insurance or not? The person say, got. They say, oh, if you got no insurance, the cost is 118, 100 ringgit for consultation, 18 ringgit for I don't know what. Then the other one will be 245 if let's say you got insurance.
Insurance is more expensive.
Yeah. So then everyone went, one night this post went crazy, right? I think maybe you've seen that. Doctors texted me. They showed me the MMS thing. Apparently standard charges for first consultation is 245. It's just that doctors usually will give a discount to you because you don't have insurance. So then they feel victimized now. They say, why should I be so good?
Yeah, so I shouldn't give you the insurance.
I shouldn't give you a discount.
Yeah.
I usually I charge less whenever you will pay yourself, and now you turn it around as I'm taking advantage of you. So then only I realized also, this matter is very complicated. There's too many things involved.
A lot of different stakeholders.
But my personal thought at the end of the day is still this. There is some sort of a need of a private healthcare because only with competition you can drive further improvement, and also you won't end up burdening the whole system.
And also Malaysians are so comfortable with private healthcare already that it's very, very hard for you to just take it away like that.
Yeah, maybe it's better to segregate it in this way where when you buy your health insurance or any hospital, right, you name your service. You want the 5-star, you pay the 5-star. You want the 2-star, you pay the 2-star. Because there are also people who will say, the only reason I don't go government hospital is it's too slow. I'm going to a private, not because of the rest of the luxury or the bell and whistle. I just want it to be faster.
Yeah. Well, so you can actually have a situation where you have a national health insurance scheme whereby you have to make certain contributions and that contribution allows you to access the public hospitals. And for the national health insurance scheme, the government will also obviously have to step in to supplement it. And you can use it to access the public hospital ecosystem. But at the same time, if you want to access the private system, then you have to top up, right? If let's say you want to protect yourself against these additional charges, top-up charges, you can also buy an additional private healthcare insurance to cover, the additional costs associated with private, because you will only go for private.
Yeah.
Right. So, you need to have a discussion between the different stakeholders, the government, the insurance providers, the healthcare providers, to see if, let's say, which kind of system you want to move towards and the pathways that you want to use to transition towards those systems.
That's right.
Right, because it's not just, okay, this is here, this is the end goal, suddenly we just jump from here to there. There needs to be a process.
It'll be a shock to the system, then you get a heart attack.
Yeah, and people who are currently accessing the public healthcare system at no cost or very, very cheap, and they're not paying into their own national health insurance, they will say, hey, I've access to the public hospital for free all this time. Why should I pay for a national health insurance? Right? This is where I think we have to start building up those funds and those capacities. The government contribute majority first for the B40, and then the B40 also contribute a bit, and then you start building it up. Just like how, for example, the government is giving incentives for people to contribute to EPF through the ISARAN program, right?
That's right.
There are these kinds of things that can be learned. And in fact, I think probably EPF can make an argument that, or people can make the argument to say that EPF would be a good place to host this national health insurance scheme, because it is trusted, it has the capabilities, and I think they would be able to structure a national health insurance scheme that can even be tied in to EPF contributions. Right? So different policy options on the table, and it'll be interesting to see how this discussion continues to evolve. Any other thoughts on this issue?
Nothing much. I'm just excited to see what's the report gonna be since they already ended the PSSC?
Oh yes,
Right?
yeah. So just to let our audience know, the Parliamentary Accounts Committee did call up people from the medical insurance sector to ask them about the reasons why the medical insurance has gone up. So some of the industry players went for this hearing. And usually what happens at the end of every PAC hearing would be that the Secretariat will produce a report. They would have summarized points of recommendation and then policies that have been suggested by the PAC. And this report has to be vetted by the PAC chairman. Usually they would want to, divvy up the responsibility. The chairman reads some, the deputy chairman would read others, and then maybe some of the community members may help out in other reports. Then that report is finalized, and then it will be published online, printed as well, and given to the MPs for them to take a look. So yeah, if and when that report comes out, we will hopefully discuss it in greater detail.
Fantastic.
Yep, so that's the end of today's episode. Thanks so much for your support, and we will be off next week, but we'll come back again after the DAP CEC elections, and we'll talk about the results. Because up until now, I've said I won't discuss the elections. I'll only talk about the results after it is decided.
I look forward to the episode.
I'm sure you guys are as well. So see you in a couple of weeks' time.
See you in a couple of weeks.